So thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you, organizers, for having me here and putting me on this task of presenting some of the data on empagliflozin and what is the learning implications for our nephrology day-to-day practice. I will also be reviewing other SGLT in very brief SGLT2 inhibitors and give you a snapshot of what is happening in current scenario. So SGLT2 inhibitor are we all know now they are not the new ones, but they are relatively new. So they are new drugs in the armamentarium of anti-diabetic drugs, and they improve glucose control through various direct and indirect mechanisms. I am not going to discuss them for paucity of time. And but what is important is they have limited risk of hypoglycemia. However, many of these drugs have been tried in non-diabetic also, and it has been said that much of their potential is actually free of their anti-diabetic mechanism, and that is why they have been studied in non-diabetic. And there are other beneficial effects also, like sodium and water loss, uh, reduction in blood pressure, reduction in weight, and decline in uric acid. So in all together, this seems to be a very good combination of mechanism of action. So let's go forward. So there are many SGLT in body. For kidney, there are two SGLT which are more important. However, out of these two, it is SGLT2 which is more important than SGLT1. This SGLT2 is present in S1 segment of proximal convoluted tubule, and it is responsible for approximately 90% of reabsorption of the sodium. So what happens normally is that glucose. So what happens normally is that glucose is filtered via the glomeruli, and then 90% of it is absorbed by SGLT2, and remaining 10% is absorbed by SGLT1, and so there is no glucose excretion in urine in normal circumstances. Now, what happens in diabetics and when we use these drugs? So, when there is diabetes, there is increase in the blood sugar in the body. This increase in blood sugar exceeds the renal this thing hemodynamics, and then it is excreted by the glomerular filtration. And because there is excess of this in the proximal convoluted tubule, these transporters get activated. There is increase in the glucose and sodium reabsorption, resulting in decrease in the sodium delivery at juxtaglomerular apparatus. Because of this, there is activation of renal angiotensin mechanism and constriction of afferent arteriole. So this results in intraglomerular hypertension, hyperfiltration, and we all know that resulting damage to the kidney, leading to diabetic kidney disease. Now, when we use these drugs, these SGLT2 are inhibited, and I have told you that these are responsible for 90% of glucose absorption. So this 90% of glucose absorption as well as sodium absorption will be inhibited if we are using this drug. So this glucose will be excreted in the urine. It will not be reabsorbed in the body. The reduction in sodium delivery will not happen if we are using this drug. So there is no activation of this feedback mechanism via juxtaglomerular apparatus. So there is no constriction of afferent arteriole. There is reduction in intraglomerular pressure and normalization of GFR. And this is the mechanism of action, how it is proposed that it is beneficial on kidneys as well as one of their anti-diabetic mechanisms. Now, another important thing I have told you that not only glucose reabsorption is inhibited, the sodium reabsorption is also inhibited. This results in increased sodium excretion in the kidney. Now, this increased sodium excretion, this part I have already explained, results in decrease in the intraglomerular hypertension and hyperfiltration. And it also has various good effects. Like we all know that reduction in salt consumption is very beneficial, and it is actually working in that way that it is not causing any increase in sodium absorption and increasing the sodium excretion. So this decreases fluid overload, decreases arterial blood pressure, improves the endothelial function, and decreases arterial stiffness. Now this is the mechanism of their cardiovascular protection, and that is why this drug has been used and studied extensively in cardiovascular outcome trials, and we'll see some of them further on. And this is a snapshot of what happens when we use these drugs. So as I have told, there is inhibition of absorption of glucose and sodium. So increased glucose and sodium excretion in the urine. There is decrease in the blood glucose, decreased blood fluid overload, decreased blood pressure, arterial stiffness, resulting in beneficial effect on heart. It also have effect on beta cell function. It improves insulin sensitivity, and it also acts on liver. These are further mechanisms of their anti-diabetic mechanisms. So improve in insulin sensitivity is very, very important mechanism of action which has been proposed with these drugs. Now, there are many SGLT2 inhibitors which are available, but there are three drugs which have been US FDA approved and which are used widely in various countries, including our country. And these are canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, and empagliflozin. And so Cana was first to be approved, followed by DAPA, and followed by EMPA. And there is no doubt about their anti-diabetic mechanism and anti-diabetic efficacy. And this was a review published just few days back where they have reviewed all the trials, big trials on various drugs. You see huge trials with large number of patient population, very good efficacy on HbA1c, very good efficacy on plasma glucose, but also note a good efficacy on body weight. So a reduction in 1.5 to 2.5 kg of body weight is seen with these drugs, and also reduction in blood pressure is seen with this drug. Good reduction in blood pressure is seen with this drug. So not only anti-diabetic, but other good effects are also seen. Now, if we compare the three gliflozins which are available, this is comparison in the monograph of empagliflozin. So what they have said is that the reduction of fasting blood glucose and HbA1c is highest with Cana, followed by EMPA, and followed by dapagliflozin. But again, I will like to highlight here that these beneficial effect of SGLT2 is not just dependent on reduction in their reduction capacity of their that how much they reduce. These are much more beneficial as compared to their anti-diabetic mechanisms. So I would say that all the three drugs are almost equally effective. And by and large, the recommendations are not to use these drugs in less than 45 mils of GFR. However, there is emerging evidence that this can be used, these drugs can be used till 30 ml of GFR, and these guidelines are likely to change that we can use these drugs till 30 mils GFR at least. Canagliflozin requires some dose modification for GFR less than 60, while DAPA and EMPA does not require any dose modification. Now, because this talk is specifically about EMPA, something about EMPA. So the starting dose is about 10 milligram, and we can go up to 25 milligram once a daily dose in the morning time. As like other SGLT2, we should not be using these drugs in type 1 diabetes. Although again, there are some trials where these drugs are being used in type 1 diabetes. We'll come to know about them later. Other contraindication is diabetic ketoacidosis. This I have already said, and cautious use in person who is prone to urinary tract infection or amputation. Now, as I have said, this causes a lot of reduction in the fluid plasma volume as well as blood pressure. There is drug interaction with diuretic, because if you use unjudiciously, it will cause a reduction, a drastic reduction in the plasma volume, resulting in dehydration, reduction in blood pressure with unjudicious use of with antihypertensive. It increases insulin sensitivity. So if you are using with insulin or insulin secretagogues, you have to be cautious about hypoglycemia. And with propranolol, it can cause some sort of dizziness and blackouts kind of thing. So these are some of the drug interaction. Now coming to the important part, that what is the evidence of their renal efficacy? There is no doubt about their anti-diabetic potential, but what about renal outcomes? Now, there are large randomized trials which have shown, primarily looking at cardiovascular outcome trials, morbidity and mortality. They were CANVAS for canagliflozin, DECLARE-TIMI for DAPA, and EMPA-REG for empagliflozin. Now, there were two large RCTs which have looked at CV outcomes, and the patient included not only diabetics but non-diabetics also. These trials are EMPEROR, which studied empagliflozin, and DAPA-HF, which studied dapagliflozin. And in all these trials, renal outcomes were one of the secondary outcome measures, and these trials were mainly focusing on cardiovascular outcomes. Primarily a cardiac outcome trial, but renal outcomes were also studied. Now, there are two large RCTs which have primarily looked at renal outcome. Now, this Credence used canagliflozin, and this studied diabetic patient. This is now with rapidly evolving evidence. I would say this is now old evidence, like we all are aware of Credence. But this DAPA-CKD has been reported just last month using dapagliflozin, and patient included both diabetics as well as non-diabetic, and primary outcome for renal. So we'll look into detail of some of these trials and to give you an overview what happens to kidneys. So this was a review where this cardiac outcome trials were compared, and declared TIMI, CANVAS, and EMPA-REG. We will discuss more about this EMPA-REG. So there was a relative risk reduction of almost 40 to 50% with these drugs in terms of renal outcome, composite renal outcome. What are these? We will see. Now, this is the EMPA-REG outcome trial, which was published in 2015, primarily a cardiovascular outcome trial, but renal were studied. So 7,000 patients were randomized into three groups: EMPA 25 milligram versus 10 milligram versus placebo. And primary outcome, which was cardiovascular, was wonderful. All were very significant. No doubt about their cardiac efficacy. But what about renal efficacy? So what happened subsequently, because it was a secondary outcome analysis, so further studies were done. These two groups were combined. EMPA, so a single group of EMPA was made and compared versus placebo. And results were published next year in NEJM. And what they have shown, that if you are using empagliflozin as compared to placebo, there is 39% relative risk reduction in incident or worsening nephropathy, right? And these are all patients who are diabetic. They may or may not have. So if they don't have diabetic kidney disease, it will be prevented. If they have already have diabetic kidney disease, it will be prevented to progress further. And it was 39% reduction. And it was a significant reduction. P-value was highly significant. What they have also shown is that progression to macroalbuminuria from normo or microalbuminuria was reduced by 38%. Doubling of serum creatinine was reduced by 44%, and any need of initiation of RRT was reduced by 55%. So a significant reduction in any of the renal parameter if you are using this drug as compared to your standard of care, which was there in the placebo group, right? Another interesting point with this drug, which they have said, is that somehow this drug worked better in the Asian subgroup, and this is of our interest. Like you will study subsequently in DAPA-CKD when the results are published, that it is slightly inferior. They have reported in Asian subgroup. I will not tell that data, but if you see this data, they have said that this drug has worked better in the Asian subgroup. And this beneficial effect of empagliflozin was equal whether you are using 10 milligram or 25 milligram of EMPA, irrespective of their HbA1c, irrespective of their baseline blood pressure, baseline any medication, baseline EGFR, like or spectrum of, so whether there were albuminuric, they were non-albuminuric, whether they had GFR of more than 60 mils, whether they had GFR of less than 60 mils, it was irrespective of that. These drugs had produced their effect in the beneficial renal outcome. Now, this was another trial which has been published just last month, 29th of August. It has been published in NEJM. The trial name is Emperor Reduce trial, again studying empagliflozin, primary outcome in heart failure. However, what is important is that they have included both diabetics as well as non-diabetics. So almost 50% of participants were non-diabetic. They randomized 3,700 patients into two groups receiving EMPA 10 milligram versus placebo. So primary outcome was composite of cardiovascular death or hospitalization, but renal outcomes were one of their secondary outcome. So primary outcome was beneficial in terms of cardiovascular death and hospitalization. Again, I am not discussing that primary outcome for paucity of time, but let's go straight to the renal outcome. So this was the renal outcome. So as expected initially, just like what happens with ACE inhibitor or ARB, there is an initial reduction in the GFR, but then subsequently it improves and then it crosses the placebo. And then this effect is persistent or in fact increases even after withdrawal of this drug. So even after withdrawal of this drug, the patients gained an average GFR of 3.3 mils per minute per meter square as compared to placebo. So this was better in terms of renal outcome. Secondly, the EGFR slope, the decline in EGFR. This is the placebo and this is the AMPA. So there was an initial drop in AMPA, but subsequently they stabilized. So at the end of the study, there was so annual rate of decline in EGFR in EMPA was 0.5 versus 2.3 in placebo group. So there was a mean difference of 1.7 mils of GFR. Again, a significant finding. Then third is what they have said is composite renal outcome that I was talking about previously also, that included initiation of dialysis, renal transplant, or a profound sustained reduction in estimated GFR. Now 50% reduction. So a very highly significant reduction. So almost 50% of patients were prevented to go onto dialysis or transplant if you are using this drug. Again, with like other SGLT2 inhibitor, uncomplicated genital tract infection was slightly more common with EMPA. However, there was no risk of hypoglycemia, no lower limb amputation, and no bone fracture, which was reported to be different in between two groups. So I have told you EMPA-REG with empagliflozin, which included only diabetic patient, and I have told you EMPEROR again with empagliflozin, which included both diabetic patients as well as non-diabetic patients, and I have shown you a clear-cut data that of their renal beneficial effect. Now we will briefly talk about two trials which has looked primarily into the kidney outcome trials, and we all know about Credence. Credence was published last year studying canagliflozin, and DAPA-CKD, which has been just presented last month. Now, important difference between Credence and DAPA-CKD is that Credence has studied patients only with type 2 diabetes, while DAPA-CKD has included patients both with diabetes as well as non-diabetes. And we know about Credence that there was a significant improvement in primary outcome, which was the renal outcome of doubling of serum creatinine, end-stage renal disease, as well as death due to cardiovascular or renal disease. So if you remove this cardiovascular aspect, even then there was significant improvement in terms of renal outcomes. So a wonderful outcome with use of canagliflozin. And then came this DAPA-CKD. As I've told, this included both patients with diabetes as well as non-diabetes, 4,300 patients who were randomized to receive DAPA 10 milligram versus placebo. And the results were published just last month. And what they have shown that irrespective of their diabetes status or underlying kidney status, there was a significant 39% relative risk reduction in sustained more than 50% EGFR decline, end-stage kidney disease, renal or cardiovascular outcome, and the secondary outcome was all-cause mortality. Again, a significant 31% relative risk reduction if you are using this drug. So again, these are irrespective of their diabetic potential because patients were both diabetic as well as non-diabetic. Right. So I'll now conclude here, and I'll say now what we have learned and what are our implications for, because that was the objective of this talk. So I have told you that these are the new drugs in armamentarium of diabetes management, but I have also said and shown you the data that potential of these drugs is much more than their anti-diabetic effect. And I have shown data on Emperor, but there and DAPA-CKD and DAPA-HF. These are the three large trials which have shown their CV as well as renal beneficial effect in non-diabetic. There are other beneficial effect. We have not gone into detail of some of them. I have shown you the effect on sodium excretion and improvement in the fluid status. I have shown you some data on reduction in the blood pressure, reduction in weight, but there is also data on reduction in uric acid, reduction in their inflammatory markers. So everything works wonderfully and everything improves for the benefit of patient. So what is the end point? What is the final wording? So is SGLT2 the new vitamin D? So there was a lot of enthusiasm with vitamin D that it should be used in all the patients, or should SGLT2 inhibitor be added, say, in water for all CKD patients, irrespective of their diabetic status. I think the data is very promising. We should wait for further evolution of data and the long-term outcome. But I think this will see the day, and this will be just like ACE inhibitor or ARB, the RAS inhibitors, that SGLT2 inhibitors will be used in all kidney disease patients. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.